Today we have a special one. We're bringing something back that we recorded back in 2022, believe it or not. And many of you haven't heard it yet, but we thought it would be really pertinent to what's going on today as we're right around the corner from Valentine's Day. Tap in, listen to us, and tell us what you think. Are you down for open relationships? Is that something you can see yourself doing or nah? Appreciate the support. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Peace.
I'm your host, DJ, and I'm with my beautiful, wonderful co host, Lady P.
What's up, y'all?
And today we have a very, very special guest with us today. We have Elevation 44 in the building. Give it up for your girl, B. Hey, B, what's up?
Hey. First podcast appearance. I'm excited.
Oh, wow. We are honored to have you.
Yes, indeed.
This is a very, very special guest for sure, guys. This is one of my spiritual gurus in my life. Very, very knowledgeable. But B, I'd love to start off just with like maybe, a brief introduction about yourself and all of your many talents.
Oh, wow. I'm put on the spot right away, huh?
Yeah. Spotlight on. Ring light
no
on.
such thing as a warm up. Well, there you go. Well, I have a little corner of the internet where I dedicate to informing people on astrology because, as we know, these energies impact us. So as above, so below, right? So we feel these things. Sometimes we can't put a name to it. So I just kind of help people put a name to it and guide them along their journeys and just kind of point at the energies and make it really easy to understand. So that's what I'm doing in my little corner of the internet.
Wonderful, wonderful. Appreciate that. So, aside from astrology, what else do you have going on?
Well, I'm like, man, what else do I got going on? I feel like I got a lot and then nothing all at once. But besides the channel, I do also have a product line. It kind of came out of the channel where it was pretty much as I was using astrology and the energies to like manifest and have these rituals for healing and all kinds of other things that I was working on. I saw the connection with using the earth's resources in that process. So because I was getting so tuned into earth energy, I started getting into the herbs and the crystals and different things like that. And so I started blending my teas around the moon rituals and using them. And I saw like the power that they had, like in terms of using it to do all kinds of things in my life. And I just wanted to extend that same thing to others so that they can have.
Yeah.
So I started a tea line and also, putting herbs in different oils and stuff like that. And I mean, I teach people how to do these things on their own. I always want to empower people to be in a space where they can do things themselves, but I also provide it in case you want it that way too. So
Yeah.
that's what I got going on that side as well.
And trust me, people, these teas are fire. Okay. My favorite is the Cancer Moon tea. Of course, I have a little bit of a bias, you know what I'm saying, because I'm a Cancer. So shout out to my fellow Cancers out there. But so good. Super natural, no additives.
Yep, all earth
loose
energy.
teas.
Yep.
There's a varying degrees of them. And like B said, powered by the moon energy. I could tell you myself just from personal uses. I've gotten really great sleep on these teas. So yeah, definitely check them out. The link will be in the description as well for you guys to check out. So I would love to use this moment to transition because we decided to do this episode today based on a very interesting topic that has to do with relationships. And B, you might need to help me out with this one a little bit, but from what the topic is today is how do I say this? Open relationships, right?
And beyond open relationships, more of like, is ask are you asking too much for wanting it all in one person? I think that's the deeper question.
That's funny. We're all in unison on that. We're like, ugh. Yeah, you got to get ready to unpack that one. Like, oh, Lady P, look like you got something for us. So you want to kick it off?
Should I set the stage a little bit with
Yeah,
that conversation?
please.
Warm us up, please, if you will.
Yeah. So, I brought this to the table just because I started thinking deeply after I had a conversation with a young man who had revealed that he was in an open relationship. And
Mhm.
I said, well, how did that work out and stuff like that, and he basically said it didn't work out because, of course, jealousy and different things got mixed in, and it didn't end up how it was intended, right? And
Mhm.
so he says, well, a lot of people do elect to have open relationships just because they're, you might find something that you like in one person. Like, let's say they bring you a great level of companionship, but let's say the other level of physical intimacy is not there. So now you open yourself up in an open relationship where it's like, okay, I value this companionship that I get from this one person, but now I can get my needs met by somebody else on
Right.
the outside.
Right.
Now,
That happens.
it happens. So then it
Yeah.
made me think deeply, like, I'm the type of person where I'm like, I'm the optimist, I guess, when it comes to relationships. And I'm like,
Mm.
but I still have hope and believe that you can get those boxes checked by one person. It doesn't necessarily mean that your relationship is perfect or that person is perfect, but you can have, be pretty
Mostly of what you
content.
want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mostly what you want and find that deeply within one person. But, it actually then started to make me think deeper, like, is that a pie in the sky thought? Is that
Mm.
actually realistic out here to really put that, that vibe out that you can really get all of that, all your needs met in one spot? And it just, yeah, that's kind of where I was like, I was stumped there because I could see both sides of the
Yeah.
coin where I
Right.
was thinking, and I'm like, well, some people hold out their whole life looking for that person that
Mhm.
is going to check most of those boxes for them. And are you setting yourself up for failure?
Right.
I don't know.
Man, there's so much to this topic. I think where I like to tackle it from my perspective is that I mean, I'll just start off by saying different strokes for different folks. I think that there is something beneficial about having one partner that you guys agree to go through life with, um, thick or thin, on one accord. There's something about that that helps you become more successful in a way outside of just being an individual, right? I think that you can get more accomplished. Not to say that you can't get things accomplished with a team. So, in other words, if you have an open relationship and you have specific needs that they can meet, I'm sure that can work. But there's something about introducing other people into your main relationship that creates a very challenging dynamic, right? Because like sometimes, especially when you're physically intimate with someone, like the example that you use, where let's say you have a situation where 90% of your or 80% of your relationship is great, it's just the sex portion of it, like you guys just have different sexual desires and fantasies, and your partner may just not be able to meet your expectations in that area, and so you find yourself saying like, okay, cool, we can have an open relationship. So this aspect of the relationship is the only part that I will step out on or explore with other people, right? That sounds great. If your partner is like, okay, yeah, cool, because I can't, first of all, that would probably be a hit to their ego. But like, let's say if that partner loves you that much unconditionally, that they'll allow you to do that. Now, if I'm out here, finding my sexual, experiencing my sexual desires out here, sometimes I might be able to find that sexual match, right? And at times you may end up having more, and it depends on the person, but there's some people who are more sensual than sexual, right? And so with sensuality comes generally like emotion and other things that come with that experience. And typically once that orgasm is reached, it's not over, right? Because like you're gonna re-up on that, you're gonna keep doing that, and when there's no denying that when two people have sex, you're merging your souls, you are connecting. You know what I'm saying? So what then happens, like what we discussed earlier, where you become content and you do have this other part of the relationship that's great, that you guys are functioning awesomely, but it can sort of become boring, and then you're like, you have this new situation that's exciting, and this person looks like they are showing you at least that they can fit this 100%, then that becomes enticing to leave, right? So you're opening yourself up to a lot of different energies, because that other partner that you have might have other partners, and that energy gets transferred to you. So that's just a really tough thing to deal with. I would say though, to kind of wrap up, for me, like why do we feel what is I guess it depends on what you value, right? I think you shouldn't have to externally, you should never reach for anything else outside of yourself. Everything should be fulfilled within you. And I think when you reach the point where you're getting into higher consciousness, um, those mundane things like sex, well, sex isn't mundane. Let me not say that. That's disrespectful. It's a transformative thing, but it becomes less important to experience those moments once you've had them, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it becomes less important. That's just how I feel. So it's just dangerous. Dangerous.
Well, so honestly, when I had the conversation with this individual, you know, inquisitive me started probing more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, was this something that you wanted? Is this something that you guys wanted together? Um, and he said, well, she brought this to the table because in the past, this is something she had explored and found great success in.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. So with that, I said, well, how does it work? Like, well, of course you have baseline rules, like you make each other the priority and everyone is like kind of the extras. And I was like, well, okay. So let's say you guys are the priority with each other. You've got this great companionship, friendship, whatever. And now because they desire to have a variety of, like, let's say, I don't know, bedroom play, they now have, you know, John Doe over here who's giving them bedroom play, and you have Jane Doe over here who's giving you something else. How is that a successful or a fulfilling relationship is what I wanted to ask, because I understand everybody has different things that they want to do, but opening yourselves up to that many different connections, as you said, DJ, like it's just that's a slippery slope, and like
Very slippery.
how do you find success in a relationship if you're missing different components? Like for me personally, I could just not wrap my mind around it, just because for me to even unlock the physical part, to me, the physical intimacy is just an expression of our deeper connection. So for me to even get to that place, we already have to unlock the gates of getting to the depths of who we are in that connection with each other. So I couldn't understand how you could say you have this particular component with your main, right? And then you're getting those boxes checked by the extras, in this case, as they refer to them. So I'm like, is that's got to be all surface level. You can't really have a successful,
Exactly.
relationship, and you can't call that even. I mean, I know some people will say that that's extreme, but that to me, that's not really a relationship, a intimate relationship. That's a friendship. Like that's not,
With
you're
benefits.
not with benefits. Like that's not a relationship
or a partnership with benefits.
right?
So if you were to, let's say the Department of Intimacy, or the sex is lacking, and you reach out to see, find that in an external party, and that person also is seeking you for a sexual escape, and they don't have any commitment to you. But okay, let's say a man in this case is stepping out, has the open relationship, pursuing a lady to fulfill that sexual desire portion that's lacking in his relationship. Okay, so the lady, fulfills that for him and doesn't have any obligation to him, but out of sex, a very possible outcome could potentially be pregnancy, could potentially be all that. So if the woman has no tie or commitment to you necessarily, is she obligated to tell you? Because now the lines start blurring where the responsibility and accountability start and end. And I think you need to be very careful. And it's, again, not just with the sexual part, but what if something happens to the spouse? I'm assuming that this is happening in a marital relationship, not in a boyfriend girlfriend situation. At least I'm looking at it in a marital situation. If this isn't a marital situation, and let's say that there was someone that they were seeking as a companion, what if that person is on the will to take everything that that spouse left behind and doesn't even actually give it to their actual spouse who's been in the trenches because they found something in them that was more important to hold on to, and therefore because of that left resources. So as you start to blur the lines, and I think with relationships, yeah, you have to come in with the intention of what you're looking to get out of it. And if your foundation has cracks, which I think leaving it open does exactly that. A foundation that's not fully sealed has cracks and eventually crumbles. And there's nothing to sustain that. And, it's fleeting, if you don't patch it up, if you don't, really ensure that it is level, if you don't ensure that it's balanced, and if you don't ensure that it's strong, then of course it eventually will fall. And cracks happen from the top, from the bottom, from the side. Some you might see coming, and some you might not. And so when you open up a relationship, you're opening up the propensity and the intensity of wounds to come faster, healing to take slower, and it's all something that needs to be considered when you add more people into the mix.
Mm.
It makes me think back to my original question. It's like, are we aiming too high or are they selling themselves short? Because if you are with a person where you feel like there's a major component missing,
Mhm.
is that really the
Person for
person?
you.
Right.
That's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I also think that, everyone's journey is different. And when you go into a relationship, like I said, in the marital aspect, you take a stance for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse. All those aspects might not come at the same time as you might think they're coming at. Maybe your worst is different than their worst, and maybe the best is different than their best. So when you are looking for someone to be on the same path as you of awareness and fulfillment and things like that, you have to be very careful because it's not going to look the same for everybody. When you enter into this, marriage, again, that's what I'm going to use, you are saying to yourself that I am seeing you as worthy of me going through those things. You have shown me enough to tell myself that despite the pitfalls, I will stand beside you while we figure it out together, weather the storms. And to tell someone else that they're not perfect means to also tell yourself that you're not perfect. And if that external party comes in and you seek something from them and they cut ties with you, are you going to be whole again, or are you just going to seek for the next, person to fill that gap?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think to answer your question, B, it's tough to answer, but it's actually sort of simple in a sense. Um, you have to be, you have to, in order for you to feel like, first of all, you have to know what you want, and it has to be something that's like separate from what your ego wants, because anything that your ego wants is very fleeting, right? Like today you can say your partner's attractive, the next day you might be like, yo, you disgust me. Do you know what I mean? Because your ego might see something else that's more fit, taller, whatever it is that you're into. You know what I'm saying? So um, this is interesting because there was, shout out to Lauren London. She was on Angie Martinez's podcast talking about this in a way, basically saying that a lot of the times the partners that we're with is it's ego love. It's not really true unconditional love. And so if you first you have to unconditionally love and heal yourself by going through that process, a majority of it I would say, because I mean healing is ever going while you're here on this planet. It never really ends, but you get to a certain point where you really truly understand what you value. Then based on what you truly value for you and not what society has told you to value, or your parents or your friends or whatever other outside influences from yourself, once you get what you value, then you will attract or be with or see things in a particular partner that is sustainable. And so if you choose to go that route to be with someone, um, and you want to be in a monogamous relationship, I think that is really the key, because I think that what you will determine is what you value. One, changes, and two, things like, let's be honest, like most of the time, and I don't know this for sure, but I would probably, I think it's safe to say that when most people have these situations where they are having open relationships, is usually largely because of sex and entertainment. So once you realize that, like, okay, sex is great, this is not necessarily like what I envisioned or what I usually like in sex, but I think love transcends all. When you get to a point where like you and your partner are on a certain level, like, you know what I mean? I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but like you can orgasm just by being in each other, just by touching each other. Like it doesn't even need to be penetration. You get what I'm saying when you're on that wavelength. So is the solution, is the best solution like an open relationship, or is there a better solution to find what's in yourself, figure out what you value, and then determine if your partner meets that or not? And they may meet that temporarily. It might not be forever. It might just be a temporary thing too. So
Yeah, when you were talking, I was like a lot of bells going off in my mind because I'm
mm,
like, a lot of the times, do people even know what they truly value and want, or are they going off of like what society has told them this is what you should have or this is what you should want?
facts.
So are they even tapped in and tuned into themselves enough to know like
Yeah.
this is what truly actually brings me value in my life and this is what a whole
Hmm.
connection actually looks like?
Yeah.
Damn. Bars.
I think it's, I think not everyone is able to experience their soulmate. And I think that that's okay because I think, you know, experiencing that takes a lot of intuitive healing and really introspection to really seek that type of connection. Um, and even if some people do come across their soulmates, they don't end up being with them. I don't have any metric or stat on it, but I can guarantee you that a lot of people, like you said, like you both said, are not who they're supposed to be with. They are settling for this idea that, okay, because this person presents themselves physically in this way, it makes sense. It's like, okay, let's use
Mm-hmm.
the rating. A 7 should be with a 7 or 6. A 10 should be with a 10 and a 9. And so when you let society tell you that these things are just based off of physical constructs, you never do the work to search within yourself, let alone the other person, because you are just so consumed
About
by
the checklist.
yeah, and by the validation of others
Mm-hmm.
who will never be able to take your back and stuff like that with the person that you're walking into life with and deciding to weather the storm together with. So I think that's really telling of these relationships and how the divorce rates are reflecting in itself. Communication. I think people change, but I don't think people change that much. And I think for communication to be a big part of why people get divorced alongside with money, I think it's very, very telling. You know.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that stuck out to me when you were talking, as I immediately started to think when you mentioned communication, is being vulnerable.
Mhm.
That is a huge, huge issue that I've come across in my relations to people.
Mm.
People are afraid to really show their
Yeah.
insecurities, really who they are at their core, right? Everyone has this facade of self, which is typically ego led, that they give out to the world, and that's who they identify with, or they create in their mind to become. You know what I mean? Because at some point in your life, you may have been disrespected or down for really being yourself, so you had to kind of change that in order to survive in society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that makes me really think that like in order for communication to really work, is to take two partners being very, very vulnerable and being able to trust that they can say the truth to their partner without the crazy negative repercussions that we typically see when someone is told the truth, right? You know what I'm saying? Um, and that's easier said than done, right? Because I mean, it's hard to say like somebody comes up and say, "Hey, like I've been wanting to step out and cheat on you," and you know what I mean? Before doing it, let's say, but having that conversation with, like, let's say we were together, right?
Right.
And I'm saying like, lately, like all of a sudden, my needs haven't really been met. Like I'm finding myself like staring at people that I never used to really take a second glance at, like, and I just want to let you know that I'm having some issues around XYZ. That is a super, super tough conversation to have, right? Because one, it takes vulnerableness on my part to say, but also on your part to say, to put our egos aside and say, can we work this out? What is the solution? What is something that I can do to make things better and to make this work better so we can reach a happy medium?
But what if through that communication, you being vulnerable in that way and also your partner being vulnerable in that way and receiving it, what if it's just time for you to phase out of each other's lives? And I feel like so many people are so afraid of being alone because they've never done that deep work to even get to the place of contentment from within, that they hold on to stuff and agree to things like open relationships and stuff that they really don't agree with deep down inside, just because out of fear that they're going to be alone, be by themselves, or lose this person. So how much of that too comes into play there?
Yeah. Beverly just had to go.
We're deep diving. We're always deep diving.
That exists, man. The fear, and this is something I actually got from B. So shout out to B, and it's something I always preach to people. So I'm sure Lady P has heard me say this a bunch of times. It's like I try not to make decisions out of fear, lack, guilt, or shame, and so if you're ever operating and making choices out of those things, then those things typically don't serve you for your best and optimal life and happiness, because you're lying to yourself if you really believe that you're fine with your partner doing things outside of the relationship, when truly you're not, but you're just accepting it because you're afraid to be alone, really, because that's what that's the true essence of it, right? Like, I found this person that I'm happy with. I don't want to go through the process of like finding someone else. Like, I'm this certain age, and like I don't want to be looked at in a certain light in my church or my community. I don't want to be that person that's like the only one that's single again.
Not only that, the vulnerability of trying to have to go through that and open yourself up to another person. That's hard for a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
But were you really ever open? Because if you were, you would be able to see, the obstacles that you don't necessarily need to face, and save yourself that heartache. I think that's what a lot of us don't do. We are in denial about our vetting process. We don't actually vet with the tools needed to find someone who's really aligned with our core values, our moral compass.
Do most people even know what their core values or moral compass is? They haven't even taken the time to even figure that out. They're just jumping from relationship to relationship.
Which is why they need to, which is why they need to get that, because otherwise someone else will show them the way.
Or you keep repeating the pattern. You keep repeating the pattern until you break out of it. I mean, I was that person at one point, and I had to really like look at myself and say, like, what am I doing wrong here? It can't always be the other person.
Right. It can't.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's
Why
a
am I
very
attracting
hard
these type
thing
of
to
partners?
say. It's a very hard thing to say.
Yeah.
When you are defeated, and the defeat potentially might come from you, that's a very hard thing to admit.
But the best thing for you.
It is the best thing for you. But it's a very hard thing to admit, because that would literally mean that there's fault. That would literally mean that how you think you show up versus how you are two very completely different things.
And a lot of us are delusional.
People don't know that.
Yeah.
My mom also used to tell me, like, you cannot be your own mirror, because you don't see how you are presenting yourself. You don't experience yourself. Other people experience you. In your mind, it's so easy to think, this is how I'm coming, this is how I'm showing up. But no, you're not experiencing. You don't shake your hand. Someone else is shaking your hand. They feel your touch. They feel your energy. That's transmitted from you to the other person. They're receiving you. So you have to be very careful when listening to someone and heeding to their advice or perspective, because more times than not, it can be true, especially if you're dealing with someone who has demonstrated that they care about you, has demonstrated that they love you. If it's coming from someone who's caring and loving, and if you can sense that, then know that they might be telling you something
Right.
that is actually true.
That's why they say relationships are the best mirror,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
You see the things that you see in other people that you don't like or that you like, or the
It's
things that
showing you
are in
something.
yourself. And
Mhm.
sometimes we don't want to take accountability, self accountability. We want to
Mhm.
deflect and put everything on the other person. But the things that you're seeing in them and that you're pointing out, they're the same things that are within. That's why it's
Facts.
showing it to you.
Facts.
Yeah.
100%. I truly believe that. I've seen it in my own life. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And it like it takes self accountability.
Yeah.
It takes, like you said, being vulnerable, and it sucks. It sucks to look at yourself in a negative light,
Right.
especially if you have or you think you have a high esteem about yourself.
Right.
But through this process, you actually realize, like, yo, I have low self esteem. Like,
Right.
I constantly am trying to keep up with the Joneses. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? I always have to keep up appearances to look a certain way,
Right.
and I don't give people the opportunity to play me. You know what I mean? Because I have to look like I'm the alpha or
Right.
whatever it is. You know what I mean? In that person's life. So
And I think it comes back to like shadow work. And for those who are not really familiar, I kind of use this description or illustration of shadow work. If you think about your shadow, you see it at different times throughout the day if the sun's hitting, and
mm,
it looks different than your actual, of course, physical form. Sometimes during the day sometimes during the day it can be taller, it can be shorter, toward as the night gets, you know, as the night comes. So that being said, it tells you that you can change at different times. And the time that you are your actual self, or you're reflecting your actual self, you don't get to see it, but you see your shadows. Oh, what? Oh.
you're in
Oh,
the bag. You were banging the
okay.
yeah, you're in your bag though.
I'm
I
in
didn't
the
want to
bag.
stop you. I was just
Feeling
like,
the moment.
I'm feeling the
yeah,
moment.
you chopping it up, but
She's feeling it. Let her feel
And,
it.
and the shadows cast over you.
yeah.
It casts over you. So for those who don't know shadow work, you're literally tapping into those things that you're afraid to accept and face. But guess what? They're always with you.
Right.
And sometimes they're encroaching on you so much so that you can't even be your true authentic self, because all these things that you have operated out of fear, what is the other?
Lack,
shame, or guilt.
Right.
Those things are overcompensating and overreaching on yourself. And it goes back to doing that work. And I would like to see if Bev can offer tips on how to do that, on how to fix
What you got for us, B?
Well, when it comes to shadow work, one of the most powerful exercises that I've personally done, and it didn't come from me, I actually found it from another YouTuber. So shout out to them. Shout out to the internet for passing along a lot of knowledge,
Okay.
because in this
Google.
world, yes, there's a lot of craziness on the internet, but there's a lot of gems too if you search. So
Yeah.
but this one particular woman was talking about an exercise of sitting in front of a mirror. So she said, pretty much get yourself in a room in a quiet space, almost like if you were going into meditation or something. And it's best to do it at night, but I think you could do it any time of the day, and just literally sit with yourself and look at yourself in the mirror. How many people actually can look at, like, not look at themselves from a cosmetic standpoint of like putting stuff on their face or brushing their teeth? I mean, like, really sit and stare into your eyes and into your soul, and really like get there.
That's so crazy, because
Yeah.
I literally only look in the mirror when I'm putting something on.
Exactly.
And that's really, really deep, because the minute I get into the mirror, I don't want to see what I'm seeing. I'm like, time to put on the application.
Right.
So that's really crazy. I don't know if I
But it
could
was
do
the
that.
first time that I really saw myself.
Yeah.
I looked into my eyes and I got to see what other people see on the other side.
Right.
When we talk about those relationships being our mirror, and you said your mom says what the other person is encountering you. You're not encountering yourself. I got to encounter myself through that process.
Wow.
And I got to see some things. And I was very surprised that the first time I did this, like, I could see like myself beyond my physical just features, and I started to get emotional.
Wow.
And things started to come up because I was
Wow.
seeing myself, and I talked to myself in that mirror.
Wow.
I said, "What do you need? I'm here. I'm listening. You've been trying to get my attention for a long time now. I'm
Ooh.
here."
Ooh.
And a lot came up through that
Chills.
process.
I'm getting chills.
So that was one of the most powerful shadow work exercises that I've
Wow.
done. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's tons more, but that's
Yeah.
the one that really comes to mind for me because a lot of people don't know how to face themselves, and a lot of people don't really know how to look at themselves or be with themselves. I mean, and if anything, the pandemic taught us that people were going crazy when they had to go
Right.
outside
Face
and
themselves a
be
little
with
bit.
themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, some
seriously.
people thrived in it,
Right.
and some people fell apart.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Ooh,
That's
chills.
deep. That's deep. I'm gonna have to
Chills.
try that. I haven't
too.
tried that, I think, extensively. But that's something I think I want to do. I mean, I've done it before, like done things like looked in the mirror, said that I love you. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff.
I haven't even
Speak
gotten there.
affirmation.
There's beginner, intermediate, and expert level clearly because I'm not even there.
Listen, there's levels, so we're all
Clearly.
beginners on some level or
On some
another.
level, that's a fact. That
Yes.
is very, very true.
The work is
Wow.
never done, people.
Period.
Yo,
Yeah.
never done. But that was pretty intense because I mean, in our lives, we are taught again, to seek outside validation. It starts with your parents, and then school, and then other areas of your life. So everything is about proving your love for someone else, not proving your love for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so we become masters. A lot of the people pleasers out there, quote unquote people pleasers out there, this probably resonates with y'all. As you know, one as a person, I was there too, so I understand, and still working through my shit too. But we don't realize that a lot of the things that we're doing of the extra mile that we take, and we feel like people aren't doing that same thing for us, and we feel like rejected, and then you know what I mean, like that cycle we put ourselves through. The real reason why you're doing those things that you consider to be so nice, and you're wondering why you're not getting that back, well, it's because you're doing it for selfish reasons. You're doing it because you want to receive a certain behavior. You want to receive love back because 9 times out of 10, you probably don't truly love yourself. That's why you feel the need to go above and beyond for everyone, to please everyone, so that you can feel satisfied by yourself, with yourself, because you thrive and live off of the appreciation that you get for showing love to others. You feel me?
Yeah.
So once I realized that, like, damn, like I'm actually really selfish.
And it's coming off as being selfless, but it's
Right.
really
Bingo.
selfishness.
But I
Yeah.
fooled myself into thinking I
Yeah.
was being selfless
That's deep.
and sacrificing myself, but it was all self-serving.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
very deep.
Yeah.
It makes me think about just like the love languages and how
Right.
people
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, that person doesn't speak my love language." And usually, the way that somebody shows you love is the way that they want to be loved.
Right.
That's
So,
true.
it
That's
just made
facts.
me think about that and how you say, like, hey, I was doing these things for these other people, but this is the love I really wanted to receive in
myself.
return.
Exactly.
Instead of directing it towards yourself, you're directing it outside of yourself. And
Right.
it kind of goes back to what we're taught, in society from the time that we're little. It's always to plug into other people.
Yes.
And never to plug into ourselves. So a lot
Right.
of people don't even know how to they don't know what that looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Mm.
Yep. So you just continue the cycle, and you continue to like ask yourself, how many people have probably heard like, I just don't understand like why, like I would
Right.
never do that to this person. You know what I
Right.
mean? Or I don't know why this person doesn't, reciprocate this behavior.
Right.
But what's funny about that is that's all in the grand scheme of life and your lessons when you come here. It's all part of a lesson that you are to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to keep facing that issue of people not showing you in your life. For those people who are people pleasers, let's say, you're going to keep going through that cycle until you realize that, like, yo, I need to show myself this love. Again, be with the gems. She gave me this other gem that's on my whiteboard. Something as simple as, like, before you do something for somebody, would you do the equivalent for yourself?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
When she told me that, I was like, yo, that's super profound.
Right.
Right? Like, I was out here like willing to go the extra mile and do
Right.
all of this
Lose
just
a
to,
kidney and everything.
you feel me?
Right.
And like my efforts wasn't really
Giving that back.
reciprocating that
Right.
behavior,
Of
and it's
course.
just like, and then I would feel empty and like, you know what I
Right.
mean, like
Then the resentment comes
the
in.
resentment
Yeah.
comes in, like, damn, motherfuckers don't really rock with me, like they don't really love me, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? So then
Right.
I'm looking for revenge in some way or to blame them for the issue, but realistically,
Right.
it's me.
Right.
You feel me? And so, yeah, that took a lot for me to get there, man. But, thankfully I had like, people in my life to kind of help show me the light. And I was
Yeah.
open enough to kind of do the work and get there. So now I'm in a better place. And it's constant work, right?
Right.
Because the ego is that thing in your mind that gives you those thoughts of doubt and every negative thought that you could think of.
Right.
And it's not, I hate that we say like the ego is the enemy because that's not really true. The ego is just showing you the light. In order for you to respect and appreciate lightness, the light, you need darkness.
Right.
And that's what your shadow self represents.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's doing these things and attracting people in your life to mirror behavior so that you can realize whatever lesson you came here to learn
Mm-hmm.
in regards to that. So for people who are on the opposite side, so people who are super selfish,
Mm-hmm.
they have probably the reverse, right, experience.
Mhm.
Like they won't probably find true happiness until they stop being selfish
Right.
and be more selfless and
Right.
learn the balance there. Because there's things in their life that show them like, no, you know what I mean? And we could go on and on. People who are unable to be vulnerable. Me and P was talking about this. There's people out there who are up in age now who can't find successful relationships and are like wondering like why they can't. It's because there's something within you that's stopping it. Maybe you're not vulnerable enough. You
That was me at one time.
talk your
Yeah,
shit. Talk
I
your ish
mean,
cup.
Where I couldn't be fully open and vulnerable because I wasn't fully open and vulnerable with myself.
Right.
There was a lot of traumas and things that I suppressed that I never went and did my own healing and
Right.
reconciling of. And so it's really hard to open up that door for other people when you have not even acknowledged that there's a room with a door closed.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And through that process, and a lot of the times people avoid it, and I know I avoided it for so long because it's an uncomfortable, painful experience to open that door and unpack everything.
Right.
You're like, you've been shoving everything in this closet and just shutting the door shut, and then you open this closet and you're like, oh my gosh, it's
like,
packed to the
goddamn.
ceiling. And now I gotta unpack all of this stuff by myself, and you've got to literally walk through that by yourself. Yes, you have your supporters and your team of people, but nobody's doing that work but you. And you're going through the emotions and stuff like that. And a lot of people will do whatever they can to avoid that.
Right.
And then a lot of the times our ego, I'm glad you brought it up, the ego, people demonize the ego, but the ego, the one primary job is to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And it will do whatever it can to protect you. And it will tell you, do not open that door because you're going to experience pain. And my job is to protect you from pain.
100%.
And so this is how it all comes full circle. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so it has its purpose. It really, really does. So it's not our enemy, man. It really isn't. Shadow work, dealing with your shadow self, that's not like your enemy. Those things are there for a reason for you to face and to deal with because there's some truth behind that you need to find. And so
it's all a part of you. Your higher self, your lower self, your ego. It's
all
all you.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, if you don't love your shadow self, you don't love yourself because that's a part of you.
Bingo.
And that's why that exercise of looking in the mirror and seeing yourself for who you are, the good, the bad, the high, the low, and embracing all of it. Be like, I see you. You wanted me to acknowledge you. I see you. I'm here. I hear you.
Yes.
And now you get to all integrate together and work together as a team versus everybody being on their own thing, fighting for individual power. So the ego doesn't have to fight you anymore. You can work with the ego now.
Exactly. You integrate the ego.
Yeah.
Because you can't get rid of it. It's never going to go away. That's something that I'm starting to realize. It's like, even though I get to these points of like healing and stuff, and it's in stages, but I realize that even now, I still have certain thoughts that roll into my head or things of my past that I feel bad about. It still comes up.
Right.
But what I do notice is that I have an ability now to be more mindful, understanding, and I can actually change the narrative of the story. I can tell myself, like, you know what, that really wasn't what happened. You know what I
Right.
mean? Or that person was just going through something. They didn't
Right.
really mean to blow up on me or tell me
Right.
this about
Right.
myself or treat me this way. It's a
Mhm.
reflection of how they felt about themselves. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like you get to reframe the narrative, and so you find peace in that. And
Mhm.
so by finding that peace, you release,
Mm.
you operate more in forgiveness, less in
Mhm.
judgment, which
Mhm.
is what we are, I think, part of our responsibility is here is to do that same work
Right.
so that we're not, so I'm less likely to bleed on you. I'm less likely to project how I feel on you. And it's still
Mhm.
going to happen because I'm a human being. None of
Right.
us are perfect,
Right.
nor were we ever made to be perfect,
Right.
right? There's certain things. That's why I love this exercise that you're talking about, like staring at yourself in the mirror. I mean, yes, we live in an era where you can pretty much change anything on your body if you really can afford to.
That's another conversation for another day, folks.
But accepting yourself, integrating all aspects of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, and saying like, yo, this is me, bro. Like, and I love myself. I love
Right.
all of it. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean? I love that I can be destructive if I want to be, but I choose
Right.
not to be. Like,
Yeah.
that's dope. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just reframing. I don't know. This is my
Yeah.
thoughts.
No, that's
But
real.
then to bring it back full circle to where we started,
Yeah.
if you're at that place where you've done the deep work, right? And you've gotten to this place of like, I accept myself, I love myself, this is who I am. Do you put yourself in those dynamics now of where we started this conversation of opening yourself up to those types of situations?
I'm gonna say probably not.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see a need to go to that part because again, like, man, sex comes from your root and your sacral chakra, roughly, right? Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
those are the chakra points that generally, um,
Primarily the sacral, but yes.
primarily the
Yeah.
sacral, right? So once you're balanced out in those areas, then that's considered. I mean, each chakra is important, but those are the lower chakras.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Connected by the heart chakra because the
There you
heart
go.
chakra connects your higher chakras to your lower chakra. So once you've done that work in that heart center in that space and you've gotten to that self-love, self-forgiveness and to that point,
Yeah,
then the energy flows through because the
Right.
heart is the connector.
Right.
bingo,
It's like the conductor that lets the energy go and flow
bingo,
through.
up
Yeah.
up through the crown and the other
Right.
chakras. So my point in saying that is one of the lower levels of enlightenment here on the
Mm-hmm.
planet. So yes, there's sexual transmutation and there are tons of tantras and tantra sex and stuff. There's ways to find enlightenment through sex, but it's one of the it's the lowest form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're doing your work and you are working through your chakras, you'll realize that there's less of a need to have sex.
Mhm.
It would then be a choice
Mhm.
of which you could probably find, like we
Mhm.
talked about earlier, ways to satisfy yourself
Mhm.
in that way and other ways that's
Right.
unnecessary for you to like really reach out to somebody else. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right.
Yeah. It also makes me think that where I started in this conversation of is that a pie in the sky dream of thinking that you can have it all with one person. Once you've done that deep inner work and you've gotten to that place of balance, and that heart chakra is balance in that sense, it makes me think like, okay, well, there is a possibility because to me, sex again is just a physical manifestation of the deep connection that you have with someone. It's the
Facts.
byproduct of that.
Right.
And so
Facts.
it's not just a purely physical act. It's just the act that
Facts.
is a physical form of something deeper, that spiritual, that deep connection. But
Right.
that deep connection has to start from within first.
Right.
Once you find that, then that allows you to open up and then deeply connect with someone else in that way where that does unlock.
Right.
You can check all the boxes with a particular person,
Bingo.
but a lot of people don't even get to step one in order to get to step two, which is that phase, right?
And here's something I want to add to that if I can. You find out if you restructure your values based upon what your higher self really wants or needs or whatever, you probably will find that if this person in front of you is not that person, you're probably going to leave. And then when you find that person, you'll know and they'll match up to those values. And so, yes, it's not pie in the sky. You can have it all. Now, what I want to clarify is does that mean that that person will have no imperfections?
Right.
No,
No.
absolutely not, because
You,
everybody has imperfections,
exactly.
right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
they can't meet 100% of what your
Exactly.
values are. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And also meet the other very physical part, which
Right.
is
Yes.
the sex, because
Yes.
once you have that deep connection and you guys have gotten to bond in that particular way,
Right.
the sex is going to flow as a result of that, because you're going to
Right.
be so deeply connected in that way that the physical manifestation is going to come out through sex.
Mm.
So I don't think that there's a disconnect in sex when you're deeply connected all the way
Right.
from a real soul level, you
Yeah.
know? And that's just my,
I,
thought about that.
I
But
like that thought. I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
It
too.
makes me think, and I don't know if we can segue here, but since we're talking about sex, I feel like we, as human beings, have been lied to about sex,
Yeah.
what it should be about, especially our generation, millennials and younger, I guess, maybe even older. I guess we've all been lied to. Um, we I guess because like if we think about the older generations, right? They in the heavily religious aspect, it was literally for procreation, right? Like
Mhm.
women some years ago weren't even able to explore their bodies because that was considered sinful. You were only to have sex to procreate,
Mhm.
right? You kind of see that in Handmaid's Tale.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's wild. Like that's
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You can't even really enjoy the pleasures of it. But it makes me really think that like yo like our generation we've had to kind of had the opposite, right? We've been over sexualized in our music, what we see in our movies and stuff like that, porn. These are where we go to learn
Sex.
about sex,
Yeah.
which are probably the most animalistic lowest forms of sex that we can have, and really just tap into our animalistic nature and not our higher nature, of intelligence. So, what do you guys think about that? Do you feel like that's true? That I'm sort of on the right track here with sex being something that we are miseducated on, or do you
It's
feel like
watered
it's
down.
taught in the right way?
I feel like we're getting the McDonald's version of sex.
Yeah.
No, no knock on McDonald's. Don't come for me, McDonald's. But you know what I mean? We're getting the fast food version of it. Like
Yeah.
that's not what sex on like there's a difference between eating like like a meal that's soulful that
Yes.
hits the your like that
Yes.
hits deeply, and then eating some fast food that you picked up in like 2 minutes from the drive through. Like there's a completely different experience and how that
Mm,
even gets digested by your
right.
body. So I feel like what we're getting is the fast food version of sex in society,
Yeah.
and not really what it's supposed to be, which is nourishing.
Some of y'all think y'all like McDonald's.
Listen,
Some of y'all really
we're not
think
coming
y'all
for
like
you,
McDonald's.
Don't get us.
Y'all like y'all really rock with the Mickey D's. Son. That's only because you haven't really had
That
or
soul
truly
food.
understood the
Yeah.
truth that there's something better out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think our animalistic habits are not far from us.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Very
I
easy.
always quote old Kanye when he says, "No church in the wild," because for me it always just resonates and tells me that if you strip away all man-made laws and everything, at the end of the day you have animals, you have people who are operating, um, to have their fundamental needs met, which sex is typically a fundamental, in the hierarchy of what you need to live and sustain life. Um, Intimacy is a higher conscious uh, ideology, and that has just been introduced because you have to think about, like you said, DJ, women weren't allowed to explore their bodies and things like that, but it was only because they were seen as second class citizens. They weren't seen as human beings worthy of a human experience,
Right.
worthy of the ability to think higher than what their fellow man would tell them. And then in that also, men were taught that, you are to just find a virgin and, get your child and move it and keep it going. So on both ends of the spectrum, intimacy was introduced fairly newly, like, and I still think it's still a new topic because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people only think about sex and remove intimacy. It doesn't go hand in hand when people talk about it, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that is the problem in itself. And as a higher conscious being, we should be more careful how we talk about it without highlighting the very big part of intimacy. Sex is the animalistic portion of our being.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. But intimacy is the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's what we need to encourage in our sex
Mm-hmm.
education. Also, intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just, we are not animals, so you can't just do that, because
There you go.
we also have to understand that with that animalistic vibrational execution, it comes with these consequences. And if we don't think higher, this is the ramifications of what vibrating at this level will do.
Yeah.
Having children, just anywhere,
Broken homes
broken
too.
homes,
Yeah.
procreating everywhere. Our society doesn't allow us to think about sex solely. We have to also think about other aspects of what that does, and that's something that you can't necessarily control. We can try. Man has tried to control it, um, you know, um, birth control, contraception, toys, whatever have you. But at the end of the day, at its core, that typically is the result of sex procreation. And so, what, aside from exploring and sexual escapades and exploring, all the different things society tells us we're able to explore, you remove all that, what do you have left? The ability to procreate and the ability to, establish an intimate relationship with that said partner.
When you talked about the higher form being intimacy and the lower form just being physical, pure sex, it just made me go back to think about your comment about the integration of the higher and the lower self.
Period.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about finding balance. I mean, that's what this whole thing is. The
Exactly.
whole universe was created off of the law of balance, right? So it's really integrating balance in every aspect of our lives. I think that's what it really boils down to at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everything is about balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Really deep. Guys, I think this is a great space to maybe end the conversation.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful conversation. I want to thank uh, B for coming through and showing us love. You know what I mean? Please check her out at her website. We'll have the link in description for you to check out Elevation 44. Check her out on YouTube as well. Really dope. We appreciate you for listening. Again, we are not professionals. We are provisioners. Peace.